Thank you everybody for joining today. I hope this helps you in your job search. Um, and there's myself and Stuart Glassman and Mark Roberts, and I'll tell you more about them later, that are here to help you. So the first thing that is, gee, where do I find a new job? And so one of the things certainly in my mind, okay, would be if you work for a door manufacturer, well, you certainly would look at competitors. Okay, so there's direct competitors. Another option you could look at is, I'll call it aligned products that have the same or similar customers. So if you're used to selling doors, well, door hardware goes with doors. Okay, access control goes with doors. Okay, so you could then spread it out just a little bit. It's the same, probably the same customer, same distribution channel, and so forth. So that's another idea. Another one would be to look and say, okay, I sell commercial doors. That was my job before. I'm looking for a new job. And I haven't seen anything with other door companies or other aligned companies. Okay, what are other products that are sold commercially? So if they're new construction, they're going to involve an architect. If they're retrofit, remodel, they're going to involve a facilities manager or a contractor. And so you may look and say, gee, I really know these customers, this type of customer really well. And here's the types of companies that are products that are similar, right? And another one people many times look for, if you've worked for a manufacturer, is you look for other manufacturers. And in today's world, the dealers and distributors who are still in business that survived the last recession in 2009, they're pretty good business people, and they are actively growing. They're being more sophisticated, looking for great people, and the best of them pay very well. So I would also tell you that's another place just to look, okay? And where to look is not my expertise, or not what I just wanted to share that thinking with you. What I really want to focus on is how to be the preferred candidate. How to have your resume rise to the top, how to be the person that they really want to hire, okay? As opposed to just you're one of 100 or one of 50 or whatever the number is, but to be in that top tier of people they're really interested in. And that's what I want to share with you. My experience in helping people to get hired, and that's not my job. I just, I frequently, people will seek out my advice, and I'm always willing to help people. And, I just remember 3 years ago, I was in Chicago and I got in an Uber car, and I miss riding Uber and the travel experience, but I loved Uber because I loved the conversations I would get in with the drivers. And there was a young recent college graduate driving, and we started talking, and lo and behold, he was looking for a job, and he had an interview with a building materials company. And I said, okay, yeah, okay, here's what I want you to do, right? And I gave him a copy of my book that I happen to have with me. And I just said, look, this company, this is who they sell to. This is how they go to market. This is what they're known for. Here are all these things. And so when you go in there, I want you to go in, not just I'm here to, apply for a job, but like you're going to have more knowledge than the other candidates probably, okay? And he called me next week and said, I got hired. I got the job. And it was like he was able to talk about this company's primary target is residential new construction. So they are really looking at selling to builders. So I really gave him like, here's things to read and study to learn about builders so he could talk the most knowledgeably. So that was and it's always stuck with me about how, when you're the most, how to be the most preferred, it's not that hard in our industry, okay? Now, as I say, it's not that hard to stand out, mainly because building materials is just not a sexy business. It's like, you think Google, Apple, Tesla, investment firms, okay? Well, all the people that went to Harvard and stuff, that's where they're going, okay? They're not going into building materials, right? And so it's kind of like, I feel like I've been successful in building materials because I focused on building materials, not because I'm the brightest guy in the world, but there's less competition in building materials than if I was, trying to be a consultant to high-tech companies. Okay. And so so keep in mind, it's easy to stand out and be a rock star in building materials than it is in a number of other industries. Now, there's two kinds of people. I'm assuming here in our audience that we have two kinds of people. We have people that are older, which means more experienced, okay? And we have people that are younger. Now, if you're an older person, your knowledge is both an asset and a liability, okay? Your knowledge is an asset, but it becomes a liability when you start to assume that you know everything. Okay, that when you're kind of set in your ways, your asset of your knowledge now becomes a liability. Okay, so when you know exactly how to do something, and you're not saying that you don't, okay, but when the interviewer is reading from you, you're not going to adapt to their system or how they're going to work. You're going to be hard to work with. Okay. And so you want to keep in mind that your knowledge is an asset, but it can also be a liability. Okay. Another thing, an experienced person is your contacts to the company that is interviewing you. Your contacts may have tremendous value, like that you can get a meeting with KB Homes, or you can get a meeting with Gensler or Turner Construction or, big architectural firm. That may have value to them. Okay. It also can have value that you know how to make contacts and build relationships, okay? As an older experienced person, depending on where you're at, your past pay level and benefits may be hard to match, right? So you can have, you could be in your mid-50s and have had this wonderful career, wonderful job, and be making well into six figures and have all kinds of wonderful benefits. It may be hard for you to match that. And you just need to accept that and keep that in mind and decide what you want to do with that. Okay. Another one is, so as I said, your knowledge is an asset and a liability. Most companies are looking for your ability and willingness to bring your knowledge and experience while following their strategies. Okay. And so if they love the fact that you understand architects or you understand how the door industry works, or, they will love that. Okay. But if you're set in your ways about how to do something, they're going to find that will be a liability. So you want to just be careful how you treat that. If you're a younger person, particularly like someone just, your first job, new coming out of college or something, the company assumes you have little or no knowledge. Okay. And like the Uber driver, it's amazing. You have an opportunity to surprise them with your knowledge. And it's not that hard to gain the knowledge. You can do it literally ideally spend a little more time, but you can do a good job in a few hours getting prepared. Okay. And it like the Uber driver, one of the reasons he got hired was the VP of sales for this company said, wow, wait a minute. How do you know this stuff? How did you learn this? How do you understand how builders buy, And he said, well, this is what I studied. This is what I did. I read this book. I did this. And he's like, wow, okay, man, that's the attitude that we want for somebody we want to hire. Now, the basics to me, once again, you can find all kinds of things about how to apply for a job, how to interview, all that kind of stuff. But to me, what comes across to me is confidence. The people that are confident do better than people that are not. And another thing is, whatever you do, don't talk bad about your previous employer, no matter, I don't care how bad they are, what you think of them, don't trash talk them. That cannot lead to anything good, right? And then finally, to be prepared. Now, more experienced people understand how to be prepared. I am amazed at when several years ago, I was 2 years ago, I was looking for an assistant, and I'm here in Boulder, Colorado, the University of Colorado, a really great school. And I was looking for an assistant, and I had like 6 people come in and interview, and I was amazed they like just showed up in shorts and t-shirts and a flip-flops, no resume. So you're looking to hire somebody. Now, you know, but what I'm trying to get to is colleges today amaze me. They don't teach people, their students, how to apply for a job. It's amazing to me that you know, they don't do that. So you know, be prepared. And that's an extreme example, but I'm going to go through now some steps about how to be really prepared. Okay. So the first thing is how to be, so if you want to be a preferred candidate, first thing is to do your homework. So you should learn everything you can about the company, their leaders, their products, their customers. Okay. Now, if I'm going too fast, if any of you, you're going to have access to this video, and if you want me to send you these slides, just let me know. But so first thing, learn everything about the company. So step one is simply just go to their website. Look, read everything, read every single page that you can on their website. Really understand the company from that perspective. If they have a newsletter, sign up for it. Okay, on their website or something. If they have a blog, read their blog posts. Okay, now the next step is to ask people about them. Okay, depending on your knowledge, you know, do you know people? Let's say they sell through lumber dealers. Do you know some lumber dealers? You could say, hey, tell me about the XYZ company. Okay, what's your opinion of them? Okay, architects or whoever it is. Now, if you don't know somebody, I've had great luck on LinkedIn finding somebody and connecting with them and saying, hey, I got an interview with this company. I'm just trying to learn more about them. Okay, people will help you out. Okay, now the next thing is to learn more about their leaders. Okay, so I go and look on LinkedIn and find the CEO, the president, the VPs, the leaders, and I kind of look at, like, who are these people? What's their background? Where did they come from? Okay, if they've been with the company from the beginning, did they start as a salesperson and now they're CEO? Were they the CFO of a company that has nothing to do with building materials and now they're the CEO of this company? And so they're very financially oriented. Okay, you can look at the leaders of the company and you really get a sense about what this company's like and an idea of probably the kind of person they're looking for. Okay, another way to, you know, another part of doing your homework, right? And then everything you can about their products and service. Okay, so once again, their website will tell you that. Then ask people, ask ideally customers, you know, what are they known for? Okay, are they known for being expensive, bulletproof product quality, unbelievable technical support, horrible customer service? What are they known for? Okay, so what are their strengths and weaknesses? Okay, so just learn everything you can about the company. And why I say service is more and more companies today, the level of service from building material companies to their customers has been declining since 2009. So when companies cut back on people and the kind of people that support the customer, they haven't replaced those people. So they've maybe added salespeople, added production people, but if there's a customer service, an accounts receivable, a shipping clerk or whatever, they haven't staffed up there, and the customers are noticing that. So you want to know, if you're applying for a job with a company that people say they make great products, but they have terrible service, which is quite frequent, okay, it's a good thing to know. Okay, learn everything you can about their customers. So first is, are they selling commercial or residential? Are they selling new construction or remodel repair? Okay, and some companies sell all, some of them sell a little of, you know, two or more. It's good to know, one, where their focus is, and ideally, you know, if they sell to all of these, where are they looking for you? Okay, so you want to understand, how do they go to market? So do they sell through Home Depot? Do they sell through two-step or one-step distributors, right? How important are lumber dealers to them, or the contractor, the architect? And understand who are the decision makers and who are the influencers. So who decides whether their product gets used or not, and who can influence that? So these are just things, if you can find these things out, and they're easy to find out, but if you can find them out, it will really set you apart from the other candidates. Okay. So, for example, this graphic that I designed several years ago about like how residential building materials are sold. So if you can think in these terms about, okay, here's the company over on the left, and they have to get through this channel here in order to make a sale, and you can kind of think that through, that's going to really help you. Another factor, now here's how commercial buildings are sold, or building materials are sold. But another big factor is I drew those little red bolts there because with the coronavirus, with the growth of online marketing, everything's being disrupted right now. Okay, so everything that you know how to be a rock star a year ago is changing, right? And so they're looking for people that recognize the world is changing, okay? You're aware of it, and you are thinking about how you may have some ideas, and it's more important that you just are aware that it's changing, and you realize that everything's going to change, and you've got some thoughts about maybe how you're going to be better doing it in this new world, okay? Because even when we come out of this, the world's going to be very different. And so they're looking for people that recognize, that maybe you're going to be doing a lot more virtual selling. Even when you can get on an airplane and go everywhere you want, customers may not want to see you, okay? They may prefer a Zoom call, right? So now in the interview, so the key I have found is to ask great questions, okay? So like, wow, hey, I'm really, how do you defend your specs? Like you sell to architects, that's, and then the general contractor comes along and value engineers away your spec, okay, breaks the spec. How do you guys do that? You seem really successful. What's your secret sauce, okay? Or how do you compete, with a competitor or an issue like lower prices? How do you compete with XYZ competitor? They seem like they, would really cause you trouble, right? How's the growth of online sales affected you? How do you differentiate the big boxes? Just think of like, just be curious, okay? They will be impressed by your questions, okay? Not by your answers, but by your questions, okay? And the other thing is they'll start talking when you ask this question, and they'll start sharing with you more things than you would have expected. They will open up and reveal things to you that then will help you to go, okay, that's really what they're looking for. That's their pain point. That's an issue for them. You can then play off of that, okay? Every time that I've helped somebody to do this, either, when they're trying to sell a new customer in building materials or they're getting an interview, the power of, not just answering questions, but you also ask questions back of them, okay? And they've got to be good questions. So you ask great questions. You need to be genuine and sincere, and you need to be curious, okay? You don't need to be an ass kisser. They can smell that a mile away. Boy, you're just the smartest marketing guy I've ever met, or aren't you a genius, or this is the greatest company in the world. Save that stuff. Just be curious that you really, wow, I really always wanted to understand this about Kohler or Marvin Windows or whatever the company is, okay? Now, the other thing is to also share your knowledge, okay? So if you know who they sell to, you could share things like, I found that the key to selling a builder is blank blank, okay? You have a lot of knowledge, okay? More than you probably give yourself credit for if you have any experience, okay? So you can lay out the key to that. Now, the key to that, unless you say, I found the key to selling to builders to have the lowest price, don't go there, okay? That's not good, not good. They're not going to want to hear that, okay? But if you have thoughts and knowledge, share some of that with them, okay? If you're applying for a job in sales, do not say lower prices are how to grow sales, okay? Or things like CRM systems are a waste of time, okay? Right? Just you may have opinions about these things, but those are like examples. Like if they're going to be fully into Salesforce and they're just implementing it, and you think Salesforce, you've had a bad experience with it, don't go there. They're going to go there, okay? And they're going to say, okay, you're going to resist what we're trying to do as opposed to be a help help us do things. So things to say are, you know, understanding who the decision makers are, and understanding who are the decision makers and the influencers, and their needs are critical. Okay, that's a smart thing to say. Okay, another thing, smart thing to say is, you know, as a salesperson, I'm a very expensive tool to you as a company. So I believe in using my time very wisely. Okay, so not everybody's a great prospect for us, right? So I really look to use my time best so that you get the best ROI from, you know, having me as your employee. Those are smart things to say. If you're applying for a marketing job, unfortunately in building material marketing, companies either want a doer or a thinker. Okay, a doer is companies that where the vice president of sales is really the head of marketing. He comes in and says, I need a new brochure. He doesn't want your ideas, he wants a brochure, right? So in that case, you know, you need, if that's the job you're applying for, if that's a job, you know, and you want to work for this company, you need to say things like, I know how to get things done quickly, accurately, and economically, right? If it's a company looking for a thinker, okay, someone who doesn't come and says, I need a brochure, but someone comes and says, I'm having a trouble growing the sales of this product as our marketing leader, what do you think we should do? Okay, that kind of company, you say things like, I'm always questioning our marketing activities for their ROI and looking for more effective ways to market our products. Okay, now the doer company isn't going to want your thinking. Okay, they may like that statement, but they really want you to be a doer. Okay, and so that's a challenge in marketing that sales doesn't tend to experience. Right. So another just final thing I want to share with you is, you know, make sure that you're on LinkedIn. Okay, they're going to look at you on social media. Okay, you know, they may, you know, look and see if there's, you know, embarrassing party photos on Facebook or something, and, you know, or if you're saying crazy political things on Twitter, you know, but one of the things that they're going to for sure look at is, I'm going to say over 80% of companies are going to look on LinkedIn and see who you are. They're going to look at your profile. So you want to clean up your profile, right? There's plenty of, you just type LinkedIn profile suggestions or something in Google, you'll get a ton of excellent advice about what to do. Okay. So it's, you know, you want to clean up your profile. You want to start being more active if you're not. Okay. You want to share things. You want to share thoughts, articles. You want to comment on other people's things. You want to like them and so forth. Just be more active, because they're looking and saying, wow, you know, okay, this person's on here. Are they doing anything with social media? Because I have companies that call me today and say, Mark, we believe in LinkedIn. We can't get our salespeople to use LinkedIn. What can we do? Okay, so the companies are on board with this. The companies are looking, so they're looking and saying, "Are you just have a profile with no photo, okay, or are you really there?" Okay, and so I've had people that I've, you know, gotten to, you know, start posting every day some thought on LinkedIn, and they told me it helped them get their next job because they looked like a thought leader, you know, in the door industry or windows or whatever they know about, okay, or builder sales or something. And so just be more active. The other thing you can do on LinkedIn is you can join groups, and people, once you join a group, it's really easy to make a connection with someone else in that group. And once again, I find people are more than willing to help you. Okay. And so you can reach out to somebody. Hey, we're both a member of a window manufacturers group, and, you know, I'm looking for a new job, and, you know, can you give me a couple suggestions about this, or what do you think about this company? Right. And the other is just, if you haven't been good at this, just add more contacts. Every one of those contacts may know somebody at the company that you'd like to work with, and you can reach out to them. They may make an introduction. They may connect you with, let's say, another salesperson who can give you some tips on what they're looking for, so forth. So just, you know, make sure you're using LinkedIn. So in summary, you know, one, be prepared, be as knowledgeable as you can, okay, about the company, their products, their customers, their strengths and weaknesses, okay? Be curious, be confident, and most of all, be yourself, Okay. If you're a crazy fun guy, be a crazy fun guy. If you're a serious guy, be a serious guy, but most of all, be yourself. And so for those of you that don't know me, this is my website. On my website, you'll find 500 articles. If you got a question about something, it could maybe help you prepare for a job interview, like how to sell an architect. You'll probably find 5 articles I've written about that. You'll find videos that on my YouTube channel. I do a weekly newsletter. I do a podcast. So there's a ton of free information here to help you land your next job. So I welcome you to make use of that, and also to connect with me on LinkedIn. Now I'm going to jump back here just a second here and stop sharing a second so I can see the chat box. And I just wanted to see, is there anybody, before we jump on, go further along here, is there anybody else that, anybody have any questions so far? I see Dan says that's a huge challenge in practically all companies, or Diana. So Diana, what did you mean by which thing I said is a huge challenge? I think I listed quite a few.
I believe she was talking about the LinkedIn and using LinkedIn strategically.
Ah, yes, it is. Okay. Yes, Diana, you're right. And so, and there's a positive thing where, if you go in and you talk about, your belief in social media and LinkedIn, you'll probably find a very favorable reception. Okay. To what is there. Okay. All right. Well, if I don't have any other questions yet, then we're going to jump over to Mark Roberts. And so I'm going to, so Mark is someone that Mark and I first met each other maybe a year and a half ago. And I was really impressed with what Mark does and Mark's approach. Okay. And I'll probably say this wrong, but I'll just say what I took away. Okay. And that is Mark is an expert in assessing salespeople. Okay. And he does other things, but what really got me was he's an expert in assessing salespeople for companies. And so because of that, he knows what companies are looking for. Okay. And so I was so impressed with Mark's knowledge and his just approach that I asked him to come and speak at one of my Wizard Summit workshops. And the audience really loved what he had to share. And I thought, how else can I help people looking for a job? I thought, who are some other people I could get? And Mark was a person that came to mind that I thought would be a great insights into how to do things. Okay. So what we're going to do here is Mark and I are just going to have a chat. Okay. And you're going to listen in. Right. And so I'm going to be just talking to Mark about questions I have. And so, so one of the first questions, Mark, is there anything in your introduction that you would like to clarify or say?
No, I've been in sales for 36 years. I've hired thousands of salespeople, trained thousands of salespeople. So I'm just here to answer questions and help all of you that are looking for your next adventure. And make sure and connect with all of us on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So I love this thing that I remember one of the first things that stuck with me, when we talked in the past, you said, everyone in a job search is in sales. I thought, wow, what do you mean by that? And I haven't ever got a chance to ask you that. So what do you mean by that, Mark?
Well, I mean, there's common practices in sales. If you've been in sales, you probably have been trained, although about 50% of the people in sales have never been trained. But what you want to do is focus on the customer more than yourself. I think where a lot of people fail when they do their interviews, they talk a lot about themselves and what they want. What I'd like you to do is take time, as Mark indicated, ask really good open-ended questions that help you understand their business, but talk about them and their needs. And that's what a good salesperson would do, because they're going to actually be judging you, particularly if you're applying for a sales role, on how you interact during the interview.
Yeah. Okay. And so now I look at, I always think about if I were interviewing for a job for a company, the more I also focus on their customers.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, like, it's like if I get the impression, if I'm interviewing someone and I get the impression that they are focused on the needs of the meeting the needs of my customers, that's going to be a win for me, as opposed to somebody that goes, okay, how can we make more money? How can we get this guy to buy something? You know, that's not a win, right? And so
Well, and I agree. And, the person that's interviewing you, it would be a great question to ask, why are you hiring somebody right now? What problem are they going to solve? What is the goal? Are you replacing somebody that got promoted? Are you adding new people? Help me understand,
great.
what's going on, because again, that just shows, a different level of employee.
Yeah, yeah, I really like that, because I think everybody, they have two choices. Like, I can find a body to fill a slot, or I can find someone that adds value.
Right.
Okay. And someone that asks questions like Mark just talked about, they go, wait a minute, this person is going to add value. They aren't just an expense. Okay. Um, and so I think that's important. And so, also, you publish a lot of great content, and so you, in your content, you talk about your ideal customer profile. You know, what do you mean by that, and how might it apply in a job search?
Your ideal customer profile is the companies that value you most. So the way you could apply it in a job search is, don't apply, for 50, 60 jobs a day. Spend some time and, maybe some quiet time and actually figure out what's your ideal job. What does it look like? What would you be doing? I mean, as much detail as possible, then go out and find jobs that match that. One of the quickest ways to improve your sales is to call on customers that would value you. And the same thing holds true for when you're applying for a job.
Yes. Okay. And I think also, Mark, is some people are focused on which company is going to pay me the most money. Okay. And, 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 and that's one way to do things, but I think it's like, which company would I most enjoy working for? Okay. That would either help my career, or whether I'm going to be there I'm going to be there for 5 years or 3 years, or I'm going to be there ideally for my career or whatever. But I think that also thinking about, just like when I walk in a company, and I work with a lot of companies, and one of the things today I have to virtually work with them, but I really get so much benefit when I can go to meet with them, because I immediately understand the energy, the culture. I get a sense of the company. Like when I'm walking through an office and the president of the company is giving me a tour, I can see the body language of the employees.
Yeah.
Do they hate their jobs? Are they afraid of this guy, or they admire this guy? How does he treat them? How do they feel about him? It makes a big thing about, okay, would I like to work here or not?
No,
Okay.
that's a good challenge. Yeah.
And I think that's really important, where some people put, money first. And if money's first, maybe you should sell cars or something. I don't know. There may be other careers, that you can make more money than just, in building materials. But
Well, I can honestly tell you, I've been in sales 36 years, and there were 2 instances where somebody chased me with money, and both of those ended badly. So
yeah,
always go someplace where you believe you're going to add value, where you're going to have them invest in you, and do a role that you enjoy every day. You spend how many hours at work and thinking about work? You might as well enjoy it.
well, I want to ask you another off base question, maybe, Mark, but I've learned, I've seen people that when I had an ad agency and had 30 employees and I would interview people, there were people who were desperate and hungry for a job.
Yep.
Okay. And then there were people who were a bit aloof. They're extremely confident. Like, I don't need this job. Okay. I'm going to be fine. Right. I might want the job, but it's got to work for both of us. And so and I learned this myself as being, I love what I do so much that, if I didn't have to earn a living, I'd probably do it for free. Okay. I just enjoy it. And so early in my career, I was always like, oh, no, I can help you. You should hire me. I really want to work with you and all this stuff. Right. And I learned from a consultant to just kind of be, a little more aloof and a little more self-confident and a little, like literally back away from people. Cause he taught me, if you come at people, think of a used car salesman, they tend to back away from, they need a little bit of space. But if you back away from somebody, they come toward you because they're not used to that.
Yeah.
And so one of the things just to, we all have our own personalities, and for some people it's difficult, but because you are who you are, right? And I have a hard time just not, just like being the exuberant, passionate person that I am. But that's a thing just to keep in mind, I think. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. The only exception would be if you're applying for sales. I can't tell you how many people did not get a job from me because they didn't ask for the order.
Ah, okay.
If you want the job, ask for it.
Okay.
Because
Good.
again, not only am I judging you based on your communication, your follow-up, your attention to detail, how well you're dressed, do you fit culturally with my organization, but just how the experience of talking to you went. Because in my mind, I'm trying to think, how would this person succeed in the role that I'm interviewing them for?
And just a thought to keep in mind, like my brother is the total opposite of me. Okay. My brother is a great guy, but he's a real, like, I'll call him blue collar guy. Right. And he was saying, well, I'm looking for a new job, but first thing is I got to find out their vacation policy and they had this list of requirements that they had to answer to him, then decide if he's interested, right? As opposed to, I tried to say, no, you get them to want to hire you, then you don't have to accept the job. You can then go through salary and these other issues. But if you have this thing, this kind of litmus test of, well, if I don't start out with 3 weeks vacation, I'm not interested, right? Well, it's like, why don't you get them to want you first? And then if they really want you, then if there's something that's important to you, maybe they can find a way to make that happen. Right.
Right.
But I think
that becomes a negotiation.
And there's a few people that I think, like, I just think of my brother, unfortunately, but I've seen other people that have come and interviewed with me, or I've talked to other VP of sales and building material companies going, oh my God, you wouldn't believe this guy that just came in for a job interview. And so I think it's like, it's okay to, like, to what Mark says, ask for the order, get the offer. Now you start to negotiate the offer. Okay. And so don't pre-qualify everything up front, because they don't know if they want you yet. Okay. And so the next question I have for is, you've always said that hiring decision makers are like buyers. What do you mean by that?
Well, again, when I train people, my stuff is pretty basic and I adapt it to their environment, but there are basically two types of buyers. There's to buyers and away buyers. Buyers that go to are innovative, are focused on innovation. They want to do innovative things. They want to move in new directions. Away buyers are trying to avoid pain. So what you really need to do when you start the interviewing process, maybe you've had a phone interview before the live interview, try to determine what this person's role is. Are they looking for you to come in and add a tremendous amount of new insight and energy to the team? Or are they trying to bring you in more as a defensive tactic? Look, I got an open region and I'm going to fill it. Because again, you need to know their strategy and their motivation.
Well, and I think you bring up a good point. Like when I was talking about in marketing, if you're applying for a marketing position, are they looking for a doer or a thinker?
Same kind of idea.
So same idea, I think you just brought up, even in sales. If they're looking for a salesperson, there are unfortunately, in our business, in the industry here, I always joke about there's too many old white guys, okay? And it kind of means like that we're stuck in our ways, okay? And so that's one of my greatest fears, is to become irrelevant, because I feel like I know everything, right? So I'm every day trying to learn something new, but I run into companies where we'll have a 63-year-old VP of sales, and he is just trying to get to the finish line. He does not want to rock any boats. He's not interested in any new ideas. He's got the CEO and the president bamboozled that he's the greatest VP of sales there is. Even though to me, he's just coasting and living on past stuff. He's not really aggressively trying to grow the company. Right. So it's pretty easy to pick up on what the person's trying to do. So that's a great insight, because, you don't, if you got that kind of situation and you're sitting there going, okay, well, we should have social media and we should have Salesforce and all this stuff, you're probably going to scare that guy. Right.
Yeah. You're going to seem like work.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of people, unfortunately, in our industry that have kind of things figured out where I don't have to work too hard, and it's like, what? But, so you got to realize like who you're going, who your customer is, who the buyer is. I like that. So if someone wants to pursue a sales role and to build its industry, and I think we have some, a number of attendees who are already in the sales role, right? What should they consider?
Well, first, I want to make sure why you want to be in sales. The good news about sales is it's the second highest paid legal profession in the world. Emphasis on legal, okay? Number one is a professional athlete. So yes, if you're good at sales, which is actually serving your customers, you can make a wonderful living. But it's also not the easiest job in the world. Again, Mark had mentioned I assess sales teams before I train them. And the number right now is about 46% of the people in sales didn't even set out to be in sales. They just landed there. They never had a desire to sell. And in one of my assessments, I can actually tell you, will you sell? I mean, you might know about sales, but will you pick up the phone, work through 5:30, trying to make one more phone call? You got to make sure you're in the right role. There's all kinds of places where you can add tremendous value in a company, but make sure, number one, that you want to be in sales.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think people make an assumption. They want to be in sales. Maybe they've had some experience and they've had maybe a degree of success. But I think that's a great thing, because I don't know, you don't want to get in a job that you're not going to enjoy, and
you're going to spend a lot of time there, and it comes through when you engage with your customers. If you're loving every minute and you're so focused on giving them an amazing experience, you're going to be very successful. If you're dialing for dollars with a monotone voice, trying to get appointments, you hate your job, it'll also come through. So just again, make sure you understand why you want to be in sales, first of all. And then if you want to be in sales, sales is one of the most accountable places in any organization. So make sure, that you're competitive and you're willing to do what it takes to, be successful.
Yeah, good insight. And I love that point about most accountable, because to me, marketing has tended to be accountable for, I got this done on time and on budget, not accountable that it actually did anything. And that's rapidly changing. So I love that, because salespeople, they are accountable, they're measurable. And historically, marketing people are like, oh, isn't this a cool idea? The president really liked it. That's a success. Okay. Not that it sold anything. Right. Now, tell me about, what sales skills and sales tools should salespeople have? Do you have some examples of sales tools that someone might need in a job search?
Well, I think you did a good job of explaining. Number one, make sure your LinkedIn profile is a professional picture. Make sure the tagline talks about the problems that you solve, not necessarily the titles that you've had. Spend a little bit of time in your summary so that it's engaging and I want to get to know you a little bit. But then other tools in your tool belt, I mean, you're going to need a really good resume. And one mistake that I see a lot of people make when they go for jobs is they see a job online, they apply, and they use one resume for every job.
Wow.
What you really need to do is spend some time and look at what are the qualifications for the job, what are the experiences for the job, and then update your resume for that job. If that job is called the Director of Business Development and your resume says Vice President of Sales and Marketing, it's not going to resonate. There's nothing wrong with changing, the top line of your resume to say, Business Development Expert. And then when you read through the body of the job description, emphasis on if it's true, never say anything that's not true on your resume. But if you find things in that job description that are true about you that maybe you didn't have in your original resume, make sure and update your resume. Those are things that are important to your buyer, your customer, which is the person looking for the new employee.
Well, I also think that there's ideally, I think a couple things happen, depending on the size of the company. Like big companies have HR departments and have very kind of strict rules about how they do things, right? The smaller you start getting, okay, all of a sudden they may put out something, but if somebody knows somebody, like a VP of sales says, hey, I'm looking for a guy in California, a salesperson in California, right? They will reach out to people they know. Yeah. They'll reach out to their customers, distributors, other people. And so those things will come into them. They may put out a blanket thing and see what comes across the transom. But to me, and Stuart, it'll be interesting, you can comment on this later, but you have experience with this. But to me, if that the VP of sales has done some personal stuff and some things come in, okay, those are going to start at the top, okay? Something that just comes in, just a resume, is going to get a quick, like, a few seconds, they're going to look at it and make a judgment, right? And so I think that another opportunity is the cover letter, where you can have a cover letter that you should write for each job, each company, right? And you mention the company's name, you mention their products, you mention the architects, whatever their market is, okay? That will help you, okay? If you have a blanket stuff, people can read if you're just sending a template out to 100 people, okay? Your odds are not very good of that getting to the top of the resume pile or getting an interview even, okay? Mark, do you agree with that?
Yeah, and the other thing is, be prepared with your referrals. Have people approved in advance that have agreed to, take phone calls from potential employers. If you have a lot of really good testimonies about your work on LinkedIn, there's nothing wrong with capturing those, cut, paste, and have a sheet of what comments other people have said about your work. Just be prepared. It's just like going on a sales call.
Yeah.
So spend some time, like Mark indicated, do a pre-call plan. What do you need to be successful in this call? What do you know about the company? What do you know about the person you're meeting with? Is there anybody on LinkedIn that you're already connected with that knows that person? How can they help you?
Yeah.
When I was a sales trainer at one company, by the time I met the vice president of human resources, the first thing he said was, it's so nice to finally meet you after so many people reached out telling me that I can't wait to, you should not wait to meet with Mark. I reached out to my entire network that knew him. Every one of them sent him a short note saying, oh yeah, I worked with Mark in the past. He's a great guy. You ought to really spend some time with Mark. And then the follow-up. It might feel like it's old school, but I send a card after every interview. Not a letter. I can send you an email, thank you for the meeting, but I take the time to get you a card, a little thank you card. And what I say is, thank you for your time. I'm really interested in the position. I thought our discussion about, because you took notes, one of the topics was really interesting. I look forward to future discussions. A handwritten note used to be the way we all communicated, is now a huge interruption in the job search. That one company where I became the sales trainer, he had that handwritten note in his office on the wall. I was the only one he interviewed that did that.
I mean, I think it's amazing how many people do not follow up, okay? Even an
Yeah.
email, right? So one, certainly an email, but Mark brings up, you know, in today's world where now people don't use mail like postcards or letters, okay? When you do, it really stands out, okay? You know, now people actually, if you send somebody a letter, they will actually read it, okay? Today, okay? They won't read your email, but they will read a letter, okay? And so there's some companies that, like my son has a branding agency here in Boulder, and you know, he's like 35, and you know, and he is very attuned to, you know, there's details that he notices about people, right? And so we all have our little hangups, and one of the things that he notices is how people respond after an interview. And like he and I were out for a hike the other day. He's like, I can't believe I interviewed this person and they didn't send any follow-up, any response at all. Like, I mean, it was like, that was a hot button to him. Okay. You know, it's like today, there's customers that if you don't follow, if you're a salesperson, you don't follow this builder on LinkedIn, they notice that. Or Facebook or whatever. They notice that, they keep track of that. And you're like, what, really? Yeah, they do. So it's details can make such a difference. Next thing I want to ask you, Mark, is about, you know, in today's world, there's a real popular thing going around called storytelling, right? I'm trying to think, one of the big Hollywood guys wrote a great book about it. There's a company I really like called StoryBrand, which really helps you understand how to improve your website. And it's all about, you know, this concept of stories. And I think about, like, you know, like I've learned and I'm learning how to use more stories when I'm talking to clients, trying to make a point and helping them, and maybe sometimes even giving them stories to tell. And, you know, like when I was going through my thing, I told a little story about the Uber driver. Okay. And I found it's funny, like you can give the facts, like 62% of people this and this, right? But when you just tell a story, right, people remember the story. They can see that there's something magical about it. So how can, if you agree with me about the power of stories, how can, if I'm applying for a job, how can I use stories or storytelling to help me land that job?
Well, in the job description, it's going to tell you what your responsibilities are, what they expect from you. Now, take some time and go back in your history and find examples of where you've done that. And don't just say, yes, I've done it. If you're interested, you can Google two things. One's called The Hero's Journey. It's how all stories should be written. And then the other one is how to write a STAR story, STAR. S stands for the situation. T is the task, A is the action, and then the R is the result. And most people in an interview forget to mention the result. So let me give you a quick example. If you were to ask me, Mark, what was one of the most successful sales experiences of your life? I would say, well, back when compact discs came out, again, I'm dating myself, and they were put in just jewel cases, that people were stealing them at a rate of about 20% per store. 20% of their inventory was walking out the door. So I was working for a company. We met with record retailers back in the time, and we developed a package that prevented people from stealing them. And one of those retailers, after we spent time designing it together, collaboratively working together, ordered 100 million packages, and our company made 50% margin on those, which paid down the entire debt the company had acquired year to date.
Wow. Yeah.
Whoa. Okay,
So,
that's a lot different than saying, yes, I can do that.
right. Or I've done that. So once again, I want to write this down myself. What are the names of those two books?
Number one is The Hero's Journey. I was just telling somebody, once you Google it, it's going to ruin every future movie you ever go see.
That's like StoryBrand is the same thing.
They're
yeah.
all written the same way. But the STAR story stands for situation, task, the action that you took, and then the result. And don't forget the result. And what we really need to do is make sure we talk in terms of business, the language of business. The language of business is about improving income, improving sales, reducing inventory, improving customer retention. So if you've got stories where you've done that and that was the result, by all means mention them.
Okay, that's yeah, great insight. And so let's see. How in your mind, like I had my thoughts on how to prepare for an interview. What are your thoughts about how to best prepare for an interview?
Yeah, I would literally read the job description line by line and highlight every sentence that is something that you've done. I would make sure that I'm prepared to discuss, the key deliverables that they describe in that job. Like, you will be expected to, and I would try to have stories and examples of where I've done that in the past and how it resulted. Definitely, I would look into the people that I'm meeting with. And more, what we're seeing are panel interviews. So if you've never had one of those are all about it's more of a behavioral interview. So you can Google panel interview, but know as much as you can. Like, again, my unfair advantage when I applied for one job was the key decision maker was a scout leader. So guess what? At some point in the interview, I mentioned that I was a scout leader. The entire interview changed.
Yes.
And I'm not lying, I was. I mean, don't make something up, but find places where you connect with others that you're going to meet with.
Yeah, I had a client 2 weeks ago, prospective client, that's talking about having me consult with their firm to help them figure out how to grow their sales faster. And he talked about his military service. Okay. And I was in the Navy. Right.
Oh,
and so I brought that up, and all of a sudden, boom, that once again, like you just said, the conversation changed. Okay. Because there's something that we have in common. It can also be something personal, like, I love food. Right. And so if there's somebody that talks about, and somehow I find out they like, food, cooking, restaurants, whatever, I bring that up, and all of a sudden we've got a connection. And sometimes, like I will use that. Let's say it's somebody, in my case, I'm not trying to get a job, I'm trying to get hired as a consultant. And so sometimes that can take time to happen. But I would use that like to follow up, like, hey, here's a great recipe, or I went to this restaurant, you would love it if you ever come to this city, be sure and go here, and they love that, like, wow, he was thinking of me. Right. So I think that's a good point. Just a couple last questions. What one question should everyone be prepared to answer in an interview?
Tell me about you. And I want to give you a hint. Don't start, I went to elementary school here, and then, they really don't want to hear about your entire life story. What you want to do is make your story about you relevant to the role that you're applying for.
So that sounds like something that you should prepare for, like an elevator speech.
And you should expect the question, tell me about you, tell me about your last position. You should expect that one. And again, we can have Stuart share other common questions, but number one, every interview, and a lot of interviewers use it as a way to just start the interview, is tell me a little bit about yourself. And where I see people go wrong is they just give me like a verbal version of their resume. I read your resume. I looked you up on LinkedIn. I'm not asking that information. I really want to know is, will you fit in the role I'm interviewing for?
Or our company's culture.
And our culture.
I mean, and like, are you going to be a good fit in our company? Are people going to like working with you? Are you going to be a problem? Like I was always years ago, I went to Zappos. And I took a tour of their office, right? And I was so blown away by their focus on customer service that I spent $3,000 to go back and spend 3 days there. And I was on the phone selling shoes and, with one of their people, and spent time with the CEO, Tony Haish, and so one of the things that I was impressed with, they said they're slow to hire and quick to fire. Like they will have 100 applicants for every job they fill. They will choose. They told me they hired a new CFO who was their third most qualified. They passed on the number one and number two most qualified people because they would not be a cultural fit with their company. So they're sitting there, we can teach you how to do your job. We can't teach you attitude.
Right.
And and so you either have a customer focused attitude or you don't, right? And that's what the success of our company is based on, is making people happy. If selling a pair of shoes to you will make you happy, that's what we're going to do. If you want to talk to me on the phone for for hours, then that's my job. And so that really stuck with me. And I think more companies are taking that approach where they're being a little more careful about who they hire, because it's expensive if they make a mistake. So before we jump over to Stuart, any last tips?
Yeah, like you said, I think your points were really strong, which is do your homework, be prepared to ask really good questions. If they're a publicly traded company, shame on you if you haven't read their last quarterly report. Try to find something from that to discuss. Understand the person that you're meeting with and the company that you're meeting with, and how your unique skills and abilities are going to add value to them. Okay. What they're all about is how are you going to come here and help them? It's not about how they're going to help you.
Right. And so we have a question for you, and that is from Ken. What assessment tool do you prefer to use with potential candidates?
I am certified in what's called the OMG assessment tool. It's been around for 30 years. It looks at 21 sales competencies.
Okay, good. And so that's something that, like, when you work with a company, that's the tool that you use, and you're, let's say, very qualified to use the tool. Because I find sometimes, like, I'm addicted to personality tests.
Yeah, so
I love
I'm
taking every one of them.
Yeah.
But I love taking every one of them, right? But I find, like, okay, I don't really know what this means, but I got these scores, but I don't really know what it means. But then when I talk to an expert, they can say, okay, Mark, here's what this means for you. So I think it's important there, Ken, to, not only have the right tool, but the right person you're working for that gets you the result of the tool that you want to use.
And nobody's perfect. I mean, I've been doing these assessments for a long time. Nobody's perfect. Yeah. But what you're looking for is specific things that you've seen in your top performers when you're interviewing new performers. Yes.
Okay. And okay. Well, thanks a lot, Mark. We're now going to turn things over to Stuart. And so let me just tell you a little bit about Stuart. Stuart Glassman is an executive recruiter working for the Torch Group in Cleveland, Ohio, and he has a specialization in building materials. And one of the things you'll find about me, if you follow me at all, is I say to companies, look, this is such an unusual, specific industry that has its unique quirks, that if you don't work with somebody that's experienced in this industry, you're making a mistake, because they're not going to understand what you need. And I say this about, like, if you're going to hire a new ad agency, like, I have a list of, I think, 35 ad agencies that focus on building materials. And I say, start with one of these, okay? Start with these right here. Don't just hire, a great ad agency that's very creative, because they do not understand how building materials are sold, right? They don't understand how a building's built. They will make assumptions that are mistakes, okay? They'll make, and so Stuart is, what I like about Stuart is focused on building materials. And the other thing is, when I had an advertising agency years ago in Ohio that focused on building materials, I hired Stuart as an account executive. And so Stuart worked closely with me and our clients, and he really, so I know that Stuart knows how building materials are sold. He knows what a contractor is, a builder, an architect, a distributor. He understands all of that. So I've always have, much more faith in somebody's ability if they understand the business first, and then they're also an expert in what they do. So I view Stuart as an expert in recruiting and as an expert in building materials. So that the best combination there. And so, Stuart, tell me if I said that right, or
it was a great setup, and thank you, Mark. And yes, I'm Senior Vice President and Practice Leader with Torch Group. Torch Group's a national boutique executive search firm. This year we're 30 years in business, and as Mark said, my practice area is building materials and construction, and excited to be part of this webinar. And first of all, Mark, all of your comments, the aspects of how to be that preferred candidate, just spot on, and I'll reinforce a lot of the areas that both of you touched on throughout my presentation.
Good. I think you're set up where you can grab the share your screen now.
All right, let's see that.
We cross our fingers here. All these technical stuff's going to go right here,
Sharing?
I'm not seeing your screen yet. I just still seeing you.
All right. Hang on here.
And I got it where all panelists can share their screen. So down at the bottom, it says share screen, the green button. You hit that. It's going to show you your desktop. You hit on your PowerPoint. Okay, I think we're getting there. Okay.
Sharing the screen?
I'm not sure if that's your first slide that says topics, demystifying the executive search landscape. I think you had a title slide or something, but maybe not.
Let me just see if I can get back here.
So I asked
all right.
Stuart.
Are we up on my first slide?
I'm seeing topics.
Yep, perfect. Yep, and that's
great.
Really,
okay, good.
That's really what. Yeah, this was actually my first slide, but you covered that. That's who I am. So obviously,
nice sport coat,
Thank you.
That's
Appreciate
a nice
that.
sport coat. I like that.
But listen, want to cover three areas today, three main topics, and the executive search landscape can be cluttered with a lot of different lingo. So we're going to start by demystifying the executive search landscape, hopefully simplifying it for everybody. We'll talk about how to attract and work with a recruiter. So you make sure that you're aligned with the right resources, and how to make a recruiter happy, but really how to make you happy at the same time. So that's what we're going to cover in the next few minutes. And depending on your situation, you might be in that unfortunate situation where you're actually looking for a job. Maybe you've been recently furloughed or laid off, or maybe you're just not happy in your current job. So you're going to navigate this search landscape, and it can be challenging in many ways. And I'm sure when you're looking for a job, you feel like it's a full-time job. And most of folks that have been in the job search mode, say to themselves, this is a full-time job. Hopefully, you'll align yourself with an executive search firm and a professional recruiter, and we'll make the process easier and help you find that next great opportunity faster. So what is an executive search firm? Let's start there. An executive search firm is somebody it's hired by a business organization to help them find key employees. So these search firms can be industry specific. That search firm might specialize in building materials or software and technology or healthcare. Or that search firm can specialize in a specific skill, sales, marketing, IT professionals. In general, though, external search firms are split into two main types, and we'll talk about both of these: contingency and retained. Recruiters are the role within a search firm that helps source, attract, engage, and hire talent for businesses or organizations. Now, there's also internal recruiters, or what are referred to as corporate recruiters. We'll use the term executive search firm and external recruiter interchangeably throughout this discussion. So let's break it down for you a little further. What's a contingency firm? A contingency firm is typically used for the lower and mid-level type searches. The firm works for the employer and is paid when a candidate's hired by the employer. These types of firms often send a large number of resumes to the employer in hopes that one of them will be right for the job. When a job candidate gets hired, the recruiter gets paid, typically on a percentage or flat fee basis. Their fee is contingent, hence the name, upon one of their candidates being successfully hired. So keep in mind though, as a job seeker, you don't have to pay a fee. If you're ever asked by a recruiter, whether it's contingency or retained, to pay a fee, you should be skeptical because that fee is being paid by the employer, and that's pretty important. Also, though, remember, recruiters are not working for you as a job seeker. They work for the client with the job opening, and that's pretty important. However, if you're that preferred candidate that Mark referenced earlier, and you're right for the position, they're going to work really hard to get you in the door. So they're going to be your advocate throughout the entire search process. So that's contingency firms. A retained search firm is generally used for senior level positions in a company or for positions that are very difficult to fill. A retained search firm usually has an exclusive relationship with that employer, and they're paid a percentage of the employee's salary and receive portions of that fee over the course of the search assignment. Now, a retained recruiter works very closely with a client to find the best person for the job with the right skill set and experience. And many times, we view ourselves as an extension of our clients' HR departments or recruiting departments, and that's how closely we work with our clients. And again, as a job seeker, you don't have to pay a fee to that recruiter for a retained search. Finally, corporate recruiters, they work in-house for companies' HR departments and are paid a salary and benefits just like any other employee. They often have titles like HR manager, hiring manager, and their job is to find employees for the company that they work for. These are usually large companies with a lot of hiring needs. So that's a little bit about the different types of recruiters, and which type of recruiter is going to be best for you is really going to depend upon your job search and search situation. So again, you want to make sure that you align yourself with the right type of search firm and the right type of recruiter. So now you know the role of recruiter. And this kind of goes hand in hand with both what Mark said. You need to have a strategy for contacting the recruiters, or be prepared for a recruiter to contact you. And you want to create a very positive first impression. So here's a few tips to attract and connect with different recruiters. Know what industries and what position that recruiter specializes in. Don't expect a recruiter to put in an effort to get to know you if you're not willing to do your homework up front. Only contact recruiters who specialize in your industry and at your level. You don't want to waste your time, and you don't want to waste a recruiter's time. Personalize all of your outreaches. You'd be amazed at how many emails and calls I get when somebody doesn't know my name. They send me an email to Dear Sir. Please personally address your unsolicited email to the recruiters. If you don't know the recruiter's name, don't send them an email and don't reach out to them. We're all findable. All of our information is completely accessible. Be humble. I mean, in many ways, when you're reaching out to a recruiter, you're asking them basically for a favor. You want them to understand what you represent to the job search marketplace. No recruiter wants to hear someone say, I'm exactly what you're looking for. They'll determine that. Network with recruiters, and I think both Marks sort of implied, be on LinkedIn, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But find recruiters, network with them, and then when you participate in a conversation with them, be open and honest. Let them know what you want to achieve in your job search and what's important to you. Be active on LinkedIn. I can't reinforce that enough. Share your professional persona on different social networking sites. But as Mark Roberts said, remember, these are public domains. So think of a potential employer's point of view when you're creating your profile. Make yourself visible at seminars and conferences by posting your name, title, and if you're employed, your employer on the attendance list. We get access to a lot of those as sources for our databases. Share your business card and professional functions. And listen, if you're not employed, create your own personal business card. They're very inexpensive, but they go a long way with showing somebody who you are and they'll remember you. And referrals, they're critical in networking with recruiters. Have your colleagues refer you when they hear about a job search that they might not be right for, but something that they know you could be considered for. So those are how to connect and attract recruiters. This has been sort of mentioned throughout, but when you have that opportunity to connect with a recruiter, make sure you're interesting and you stand out. I've received emails with exactly the same opening line within hours of each other. And it's clear these emails are being sent by some service. It doesn't, they don't personalize them. And quite frankly, my attitude is if you're not willing to spend this time to customize an email for me, why should I spend time investing in you and what your situation is? Be different. Don't send the usual boring cover letters to recruiters or receive hundreds and even thousands of unsolicited emails every year. Mark mentioned this earlier. Make your email genuine, make your cover letter genuine, and differentiate yourself, and you'll be more memorable. Know your personal brand story, and this is critical. Think of yourself as a brand, just like Heinz Ketchup. Use your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and other social properties as your packaging to help tell your brand story, but make it interesting and make it unique. You could line up 5 resumes side by side, and all of those have the same functional skills, and you can't differentiate any of them from who's going to be the better candidate. But when you have a personal brand story that differentiates you, all of a sudden you start standing out from the crowd. Keep your brand story simple and consistent. Ask yourself, what am I selling? What are the problems that I'm trying to solve? And that'll go a long way with helping you share and shape that brand story. So in many cases, the first interaction you're going to have with a recruiter is going to be a combination of what we call a pitch and a screening interview. The pitch part of it's where the recruiter is giving you some information relative to that search that they're conducting to get you excited, and at the same time, see if you match the background experience that's part of the search criteria. At the same time, the recruiter is going to be screening to make sure that you check all the boxes for the necessary job qualifications, and they're going to align your background experience with the role, the responsibility, and the characteristics that are required for success in the role. So it's important, and this has been mentioned throughout, have your resume updated for this conversation. Your resume or your CV needs to be complete, it needs to be accurate, and it needs to be focused. In most cases, it's not going to benefit you to position yourself as a generalist. Mark Roberts mentioned this. Most companies are not looking for utility players. So tailor your resume to the specific role or title that you're pursuing. And listen, this might require multiple versions of your resume. That's okay. But make sure that the resume is aligned with the job description and position profile that's being pitched. Your resume should also tell a story. I've got a client who's the chairman of a large national company, and he evaluates a resume in 5 minutes, and he always starts at the bottom and reads up. And I asked him one time why he does that, and he said he's able to see the story and the arc of that candidate by going bottom up. He understands, where did that candidate go to school? Is it an accredited university? What's the candidate's career progression? And is the candidate advancing in their career, or are they going sideways or backwards? Are there any noticeable gaps in their career or unexplainable roles that just don't make sense? So take a look at your resume and do this. Read it from the bottom up and see what kind of story it tells. I think you'll be amazed at how that sort of describes your career path. All right. So let's say you've made it past the screening and the pitching, and you're advancing in the interview process. The next likely interaction that you're going to have with a recruiter or an executive search firm is what we refer to as competency-based behavioral interviews. And that's a mouthful, and Mark Roberts touched upon this. Behavioral interviews test behaviors that are deeper in terms of a candidate's functional skills. In our case, knowing this information ensures a more productive long-term employee relationship with each client's unique culture. So it's been said that client's culture, like Zappos, is critical to who they hire and how they hire. You're not going to know that from somebody's resume. And you're also not going to know that from just a screening or a pitching interview. You're going to get that out of our behavioral interview process. And in a behavioral interview, we use a diagnostic approach at Torch Group that understands a candidate's communication skills, their ability to work under pressure, their decision-making, their time management, their self-motivation, conflict resolution, leadership adaptability, and many more what we call soft skills. And as a candidate, and Mark Roberts touched on this, so you stole my thunder here, be prepared to answer behaviors using the STAR method. As Mark said, STAR stands for situation, task, action, results. And the results, I couldn't agree more, are critical. And let's face it, a lot of times, things don't always turn out as they planned. And situations aren't going to always be positive, but that's okay. It's not bad to share a situation that didn't exactly turn out as you had expected. In fact, some of those are the best learning opportunities and show some vulnerability. So share how a different action in certain situations could have produced a better result. With the STAR format, you're able to kind of take a mistake and turn it into a positive life lesson. Now, Mark, you had asked this earlier. So during a behavioral interview session, I usually start a question with a phrase that says, tell me about a time, and then I'll pose a specific question. And that's my lead into the behavioral question that I want to ask. I had a recent candidate interviewing for a VP of product management role. This was a very technical company. And I asked the candidate, tell me about a time you had to overcome a challenge or adversity. And the candidate provided a very detailed explanation using the STAR method, so I gave him credit, where his product team rejected a new product launch based on data that the candidate felt was flawed or wasn't 100% accurate. And the candidate, rather than just accept this, took the initiative to conduct an independent study and represent the idea with new data. And in the end, the product was launched, and today it's generating over $2 million of incremental revenue for this company. Now, what I learned about the candidate with this brief explanation was that he's resilient, persistent, curious, competitive, collaborative, has consensus building abilities, confident, and takes ownership of his ideas. And that was all with that one STAR example that candidate shared with me. So I'm going to wrap things up with what I think are 10 key tips for working with a recruiter and helping you find your next great career opportunity. Have a strategy. Is how you want to reach out to recruiters and engage them. Know your goals and what you want to accomplish with your job search. Keep your resume and your LinkedIn profiles current and consistent. All too often, I see a resume and a LinkedIn profile that don't match up, and then we just have to ask questions and fill in the blanks. Be interesting and unique. Know your brand story. Follow that important STAR method for behavioral interview questions and responding to questions that you get asked in an interview. Treat a conversation with a recruiter as if they're the hiring manager. One, it's great practice for when you are in front of the hiring manager. And two, you'll present yourself as somebody that's really passionate and interested about the opportunity that they're representing. Follow through on your commitments. I can't tell you how important it is if we set you up for an interview, whether it's a phone interview or an in-person interview, be on time, be prompt, be professional. I also would encourage, and Mark Roberts might have mentioned this, show up for that interview dressed appropriately. You can always overdress. It's never helpful to underdress. Trust recruiters to do their job. And with that, be open, honest, and cooperative with them. And keep in touch even after you've landed a job. We want to keep in touch with you, knowing how you're doing in your new career, and make sure that we did our job of finding you that perfect fit. So do these 10 things, and I'm sure that you'll make your recruiter happy, and I think you'll be happy landing your next great position. So good luck, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Stuart. Can you stop sharing?
I will stop sharing.
And you and Mark and I can answer questions here. So if you have any questions, please just type them in the Q&A. I have one thing I wanted to add to Stuart is I've seen, if a recruiter believes in you, they're going to go to bat for you. Okay, and I find that if the recruiter has a good relationship with their customer is going to listen to them and their advice, okay? Because it only does the recruiter good to make sure that they do everything they can to make sure the right candidate is hired, because then the company's going to come back to them the next time they need a hire, okay? And so if they believe you're the best fit, you know, they're going to push for you, okay? And so I think that's another thing. And another just a little aside I want to share is, you know, today it's really hard to understand how to dress. You know, like when I lived in the Midwest, you know, I wore suits and ties, and that my clients did, and then we started to like first let go of the tie, and some companies still insisted that you be, you know, really dressed up, and it seemed like the more East Coast you go, the more dressed up you were. The more West Coast you go, the more casual it is. And I moved to Colorado 7 years ago, and I quickly discovered if I wore anything above jeans and a puffy Patagonia vest, that they don't trust you, okay? And so my clothing budget, I save a lot of money on clothes these days, but it's, to Stuart's point, you know, I would tell you to overdress, okay? No matter what their dress style is, okay? You know, and if like the lesson my wife taught me was, you know, if you're wearing, we'll say, leather shoes, make sure they're shined. Like she taught me that, you know, women look first at your shoes, and recruiters notice that also. And so it's okay to be overdressed. I would encourage you to not make the mistake of, like, when I'm going to visit a client, I call them and ask them what their dress code is, right? And if they say, oh, we just wear jeans and t-shirts, well, I'll wear jeans, but I'll still probably wear a sport coat and a collared shirt, okay? So just and keep that in mind. We have a question here from Claudia, and I'm not sure exactly how to answer this, but we'll all take our stab at it. And it says, any suggestion in searching for a job in another state? Okay. So my thing would be, now I'm assuming that you're open to moving. Some people are like, I have to live in the city because that's where my family is and I was raised, and I'm not moving. Okay. You know, so you may have to choose to take a job in another field. Okay. You take what's available, right? I tend to be adventuresome and, you know, like to move and new experiences and so forth. So if you're open to that, I would say, 1, go for it. 2, depending on your level of the job you're looking for, you know, you're going to have to look at are they going to give you any relocation money? Or is it like, we'll hire you, but we have no relocation money, and that's going to be all on you, you know, to pack up and move? You've got to make that, you know, decision. I mean, if you're VP of marketing, VP of sales, they're going to probably, you know, give you a relocation package. If you're, you know, at entry level marketing or sales, I don't know. You know, it depends on the company. Some companies just have a set policy. The bigger the company has already built in, this is our relocation package. Doesn't matter what they're hiring you for. And so I don't, you could type in, Claudia, if we're not answering, if you have more specific question. But Stuart or Mark, do you have any other comments or answer to help Claudia with that question?
Well, I think, you know, first of all, if you're intent on going to a different location, you know, do your research for that location. So find the right companies in that market, understand, you know, what those companies are looking for, and again, tailor your story around why you want to not only work for that company, but you know, what's important about being in that market. And then, you know, as you said, Mark, you know, either you're going to have to make the commitment to move on your own, or find out if that company has a relocation policy. And that's critical, and that's something that we usually help candidates with throughout the process.
I think another thing, Claudia, to keep in mind is that I think because of coronavirus and the lockdown, you're going to see more companies saying, you don't have to come to work at our office. You know, you can be like, I have 3 virtual assistants that work with me, you know, Marco in Macedonia, Matthew somewhere in the eastern provinces of Canada, and Celeste in West Virginia. Okay. You know, there are 3 great virtual assistants to help me with different aspects of my business. Okay. And I don't have a need for them to be here. I don't have a need to have, we work together. We don't have to work together in an office. So I think you're going to find more companies are going to be open to hiring people that don't necessarily live in their city, or if they do live in their city, that they don't have to come to work, and they may end up like not wanting you to come to work to save money on office space. Mark, any suggestions or answers for Claudia?
Well, first I was going to say the same thing, which is what everybody's learning is a new normal. And, you know, right now, salespeople are more productive and more effective and happier than they've been in some time working virtually. When I do customer voice work, the customers are happy with virtual. So we're going to see virtual continue, if not grow. So don't always assume that you're going to have to move there. But if it's a thing like, you know, like when I lived in Arizona, my wife really wanted to move back to Ohio. One of the tactics that I did was I connected with the job networking group in North Canton, Ohio, and I started networking with them long before I would come out, and they would start helping me find jobs that were open in North Canton, Ohio. So again, just leverage that network. Another reason why you want to build those connections on LinkedIn that Mark mentioned is, who do you know in the market where you're trying to land? And, you know, who do they know? Almost every job that I've ever landed was either through a recruiter who found me and pulled me out of a company, or through my network. So make sure and leverage your network.
That's great. Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions. So I would thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope that Mark and Stuart and I have given you some helpful advice that will help you land that, you know, new dream job sooner rather than later. If you have any questions afterwards, please feel free to email me, and I will see that we get you suggestions or answers. And also we'll be forwarding you a recorded version of this if you want to go back and revisit any portions of the presentation, and feel free to share it with anybody else that is in a similar position. So thanks, everybody, and I hope you have a great Father's Day weekend.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye now.